Alright guys, this is Versus Z coming at you with part 2 of a video review series for a Master Grade Gundam Exia Ignition Mode set coming from Gundam 00. And here it is guys, Exia Repair. Now you gotta wonder, was it really easy for me to get my kit into Exia Repair? Can't say it's gonna be easy for any of you who start off from Exia to Exia Repair, but it sure was easy for me, considering I just followed the easy to read manual and left out some of the pieces that it told me to leave out. Some of those pieces I'm ashamed to show you, but here are a few. You just pop off the entire left arm. There is a yellow detail piece for the vents, the chest vents. You also have one of the yellow V antennas on the side. You might actually risk breaking that. There's also one of the GN stripes on the right arm, which you have to remove by pretty much taking down this entire assembly, taking out the GN stripe and then putting it back on. I actually have to go through that anyway just to get the GN stripe back on and have it look good for Exia. I hate having to do that, but what can you expect? So in this part of the review, I'm going to show off some of the added details, going over any articulation changes, some of its accessories, and in the end, I'm going to be showing off some of the poses that you might be able to pull off with this amazing kit. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this review. Talking about details for this kit is going to be a breeze, considering this is both a Master Grade, and not to mention, this is Exia. So you're going to expect a lot of awesome detail out of the box. But for some of the details I went ahead and added myself. For the eye, I went ahead and applied my clear color over silver plated Gundam marker trick. In this case, of course, I used clear red, giving me this more natural metallic Terminator eye look as opposed to using the provided metallic red sticker that you get. Now if you check out the GN cape, it actually looks a lot different from when you get it out of the box. Because when you get it out of the box, it comes in this glossy, greasy looking finish, and I didn't like that, and I also didn't think it looked very natural. So I touched that up by spraying on some Mr. Super Clear Flat with UV Cut, which basically means it's a flat coat with sun protectant, and I topped it off with some Tamiya clear coat, giving me this more of a natural matte looking finish as opposed to having a glossy, greasy looking finish. And I think it looks a lot better overall. Also, down there on the GN condensers, it's required that you actually take one of these stickers right here and place it under the clear piece right on the GN condenser area. But instead I went ahead and opted not to put the stickers in and just filled it in with some gray. And yeah, it looks bland and boring. It doesn't have the cool silver panel lining that these stickers offer. But for some reason I decided that I might be able to use the stickers later on for something. Speaking of gray areas, there are actually 4 pieces in total that you actually might need to do some touch-ups. 2 back here and right behind the calves, and 2 back here on the lower ankle armors. You have to accent these areas gray, otherwise you won't get a fully completed look. So if you can't tell, I gotta believe this is one of the most impressive and natural looking kneeling poses I've ever seen a Gundam model kit pull off. But anyway, as expected, once I put some of the armor pieces on, some points of articulation did get hindered, but none of the major points got affected. So let me just point out some of those smaller areas. As you can see though, the legs still remain the same, and the amount of bend that the feet can show are still just as impressive. I did find a hindrance though in the ankle joint, the top part. That's only because you have armor pieces on now. The upper body still remains the same, and the neck still is just as disappointing. But probably the most noticeable change in articulation has to be in the arms. That's as far as it'll go forward, and that's as far as the elbows will bend. Not quite flush, not quite 90-degree angles. But I guarantee you though, later on it's not going to affect anything when you want to get a nice pose. Now why am I still complaining about the neck joint? Because if you look at some older Master Grade kits like Wing Zero Custom, hey baby, they seem to have that double neck joint. Hell, even some high grades have that double neck joint. So I gotta wonder, how come Master Grade Exia doesn't have one? Not to mention it's a newer kit. Now the cape actually has some posability itself, where there are 2 separate pieces attached to 2 different pegs on a ball joint. Now there's a problem with that. The ball joint and the plastic that the cape is made don't like to get along, so they tend to fall off pretty easily when you want to pose it. Aside from the cape and the light-up GN drive gimmick, Exia Repair really only has one weapon to back him up in battle, and that's of course his busted-up GN sword. There are some parts here that you have to swap out the normal parts with, like this battle-damaged white area of the shield and the entire blade assembly. You can clip it onto Exia's arm in the same way you would with any Exia kit out there. What I really like about the Master Grade version of this weapon, though, is that there's this hinge joint that will allow you to collapse the entire pistol and blade assembly inward, so they can allow for better storage, and it'll also allow you to have Exia hold on to another weapon, aside from keeping his hand always clipped onto the handle of the pistol. There's one thing I don't really like about this though. This clip here that you use to clip onto the forearm, the top part of the forearm of Exia, doesn't seem to clip or work as well as the 1 to 100 scale no grade version. So I don't know what's up with that. Alright, now for some of the more juicier stuff, and as you can see, this is one of Exia Repair's better, more dramatic looking ground-based poses. Now looking at this pose, you gotta wonder, would Exia fight just as good on the ground as if you were in space? Because Exia doesn't exactly have a double neck joint, it's kind of disappointing for me because I can't really achieve the desired angry Gundam look. But since this is Exia Repair and it looks aggressive as it is, I think I might let it slide. Now this has got to be one of my favorite aerial poses for Exia Repair. Not to mention the cape really adds a little bit of dramatic touch to it. Overall, I think Exia Repair's posability is pretty awesome, but that doesn't mean you're not going to run into any problems getting it into the desired pose you want. I did find some problems with the ankles trying to get it to stand on the ground. I also found that there was a problem with the clip that you attach Exia Repair onto the action base. It's a little too loose for my taste, and I'm scared that if you lean Exia Repair forward on that clip, Exia might just fall off. There's also the cape. Kind of a posability problem, but getting it to rotate and getting it to a point where you really like it and look good, not too much of a problem. There's also a slight problem with the fact that Exia only has one accessory, so you're limited to the amount of poses you can get. But in the end, if you work with what you got, I'm sure you'll be happy with it. Overall, you're given great articulation with a good amount of posability, even though there are some limitations, and there is a good potential for added touch-ups. Aside from a baggie full of parts, the Exia Repair is a selling point in itself, especially if you're thinking of getting the ignition mode set. So what do I think after all? I think that if Exia Repair were to be its own kit, I think it could stand up to its own. There's one more thing I gotta bring up before I close this review. But does Exia's head have light piping? We'll find out once the head is complete, and I'll go over that in part 3, so stick around guys.